There was once a musician who came from Fulton, Mississippi. It's not a limerick, really, but he's buried here in Elmwood Cemetery. We're going to tell you his story about how he came here to Memphis, created one of the largest swing sounds that anybody had ever heard, and died a really interesting, maybe a tragic death. Today we're going to talk about Jimmie Lunceford.
Every stone marks a story. Interesting stories, people like you and I. History that should be recounted. Here we toast those you may or may not know who have gone on before us and left behind their tales to be told. Here we'll be drinking with dead people.
Longtime Memphis musicians would know, and historians about this area would know about, several musicians that are in this area. One being a fellow by the name of Jimmie Lunceford. Jimmie, of course, he was well known in the swing era. Boy, that was a time too, man. That's when music was really something. It was sort of the precursor of rock and roll, if you really want to bring it down to that. Some really cool stuff happened in the 30s and 40s, and all of this fantastic things had happened around that time, and certain musicians had really gravitated toward it. And one of those guys was a fellow by the name of Jimmie Lunceford. And Jimmie, instead of using 4-beat, straight up swing, he created this thing called the Lunsford 2-beat. Yeah, Jimmie Lunceford. His music has been around for a long, long time. Sadly, he wasn't. He died very young at the age of 47, and he's buried here at Elmwood Cemetery in Memphis. As a matter of fact, here is where Jimmie lies now. Comedy and vaudeville played a distinct part in Lunsford's act. Songs such as Rhythm Is Our Business was featured in 1937 musical short with Myra Johnson Taylor on vocals. I'm Nuts About Screwy Music, I Want the Waiter with the Water, and 4 or 5 times displayed a playful sense of swing, often through clever arrangements by his trumpeter playing at the time with him, Cy Oliver, and bizarre lyrics. Lunsford's stage shows often included costumes, skits, and some obvious jabs at Main Street white bands such as Paul Whiteman and, Guy Lombardo. He had it coming to him, I'm thinking. Despite the band's comic veneer, Lunsford always maintained professionalism in the music, befitting a former teacher. This professionalism paid off, and during the apex of swing in the 1930s, the orchestra was considered the equal to Duke Ellington, Earl Hines, or Count Basie's orchestras. Quite an accomplishment, because this precision can be heard in such pieces as Wham! Rebop Boom Bam, Lunsford Special, For Dancers Only, Uptown Blues, and Stratosphere. The band's noted saxophone section was led by alto sax player Willie Smith. Lunsford often used a conducting baton to lead his band, and quite the show it was. The orchestra began recording for the Decca label and later signed with the Columbia subsidiary of Vocal Lion in 1938. They toured Europe extensively in 1937, but had to cancel a second tour in 1939 because of the outbreak of the Second World War. Columbia then dropped Lunsford in 1940 because of, dipping sales. Oliver departed the group before the scheduled European tour to take a position as arranger for Tommy Dorsey at the time, and then Lunsford returned to the Decca label. The orchestra appeared in the 1941 movie Blues in the Night. Eventually, most of Lunsford's sidemen were underpaid and left for better-paying bands, leading to the band's ultimate decline. As a young man, Jimmie came to Memphis and was a teacher at Manassas High School. In fact, he was the music director over there, and he got the itch to put a band together, so he got some of his students, and, they put together quite a band. It was called the Chickasaw Syncopators, and they were something else, man. They were something to behold, and people went crazy for this act, and these guys wound up touring all over the place. And it became something of an interesting twist to the music business, because at that point, swing music was nothing more than the 4-beat, the Glenn Miller stuff and the Guy Lombardi stuff that was out there at the time. Jimmie wanted to put his own twist on it, and that he did. Jimmie was a sax player predominantly, but he was also quite talented in playing all sorts of different musical instruments, also the flute, which was kind of unusual for a swing band at the time, but he certainly pulled that off and became rather famous for it. His music is seen in a lot of film. You can look him up and see some of his stuff in Hollywood and on a ton of records. In fact, at one point, he had been signed through Decca Records and then later on to Columbia Records. Of course, the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, his tour in Europe had cut short, and he wasn't able to tour, and thus he got dropped. It's unfortunate. It was one of those things. But all wasn't lost. He eventually went back to Decca Records, where he still put out quite a few bits of music under the Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra, and still traveled quite a bit in the U.S. and did some goodwill tours and things like that. Interestingly enough, in 1947, he was playing a show where he, things didn't go well for him. He was supposed to be at an autograph signing thing at a record store where he died before the show. A lot of speculation occurred as to what had actually happened to him, but an autopsy had shown that he had died of a coronary occlusion, as they called it at the time. Previously, that he'd been claiming he had a sore leg, and he wasn't feeling all that great, and he did suffer from a little hypertension and probably some other heart issues as well. But after his death, there was also some talk that perhaps he'd been done in. The impact of the Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra still continues to this day. The Jamboree Festival was founded in 2007 by Ron Hurd II. He's an archivist and a historian, according to himself, with the aim of increasing recognition of Lunsford's contribution to jazz, particularly here in Memphis. The Jimmie Lunceford Legacy Awards was created by the Jimmie Lunceford Jamboree Festival to honor exceptional musicians here in Memphis ties, as well as those who have dedicated their careers to excellence in music and music education. To this day, his music continues to have an impact. Most recently, the tune Rhythm Is Our Business was included as a track on the compilation set Memphis Jazz Box in 2004 in honor of Lunsford's close ties to the city of Memphis. Apparently, when dealing with a little bit of racism at the time, there was a diner owner that had been implicated in perhaps, murdering the man. Not too pleased to having served what they called a Negro in his restaurant, he, may have poisoned him. Nevertheless, Jimmie, this happened in Oregon, was sent back here home to Memphis, which is where he was loved the most, later getting a brass note down on Beale Street. It was one of the prestigious awards down there. I'd show it to you, but with the pandemic, it's kind of interesting to be down there, but you'll take my word for it. And if you ever come to Memphis, you can certainly find that name on a brass note down there on Beale Street. So there he was, July 12th, 1947, had passed away, came home to Memphis to be buried here at Elmwood Cemetery. Couldn't find a more fitting place for a guy like him and the music that he had shared with all of these people all over the world. And to that, we toast you, Mr. Jimmie Lunceford. I'm Rick Chetter. Thank you for checking this show out. If you like what you saw, be sure and subscribe to it. Give us a like every time a show comes up, which is on the weekly. You'll be notified for more fun as we go drinking with dead people.